Hey everybody, this is Magician 34 with Negations Part 2. We're just going to cover a few more cards in the Negations area. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, just like Light Imprisoning Mirror, responds only to activations and negates only activations. It does not cover effects. So, let me ask you about this card right here, Necrogardna. Let's say I got this set. Necrogardna is in my opponent's grave. I attack with my monster. My opponent responds to my attack by removing Necrogardna from the game in order, as a cost, to activate his effect. Well, I chain Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. That chain, that response, is an activation of my Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. No more cards in that chain. Chain Link 2 resolves. This card is now active. Its continuous effect is now in effect. It's now going, looking for things to negate. Well, Chain Link 1 resolves. All it's resolving is its effect. Its activation is what put it on the chain in the first place. That happened when it was being put on the chain. It's been put on the chain. All that's happening when the chain resolves is the resolution of the effect. Activation is past tense. That happened. This wasn't active at the time, so it didn't negate it. So guess what? This is going to resolve its effect, and my attack got negated. Now let's look at that a little differently. This thing has been active. It's been face up. It's been looking for stuff to negate. I have my monster. I attack my opponent. My opponent attempts an activation. They pay the cost of that activation. This doesn't say cannot be activated. It just says if something is activated, it'll negate it. I'll remove Necrogardna from the game. Well, my opponent now is attempting an activation of a Dark Monster. Well, that Dark Monster's effect initially activated when it was in the grave. Well, guess what? That's a Dark Monster activating its effect in the grave. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror's continuous effect looks around and says, oh, hey, look, that's not right. That's Dark Monster attempting to activate in the grave. And it negates it. So this card's activation got negated, so it never reached the chain. Guess what? My opponent doesn't get to negate my attack. My attack goes through. Now note, he still gets to remove the Necrogardna, so he still has a little control over the number of Dark Monsters in his grave. That's important for Dark Creator, Dark Armed Dragon, etc. So, a little something for you to understand there about those two guys. Very confusing. Kind of makes you wonder why they didn't word this effect a little differently. Make it a slightly different effect, but make it easier to understand. How about this guy? Gale's Special Summoning, well, it doesn't activate its Special Summoning, so Gale can be Special Summoned all day long. This won't affect it. Well, how about this? I got this set. Gale gets Special Summoned. Well, guess what? The only thing that can respond to his Special Summoning itself is a Spell Speed 3 that specifically has to do with summons. In other words, Solemn Judgment, Horn of Heaven, Black Horn of Heaven. Something along those lines. Not a lot else can stop that. Well, as soon as his Special Summon resolves, normal summon, special summon, either way actually, in fact. Once that resolves, guess who's got priority in response to that summoning? The active player does. So he can activate this effect on priority, just like Snipe Hunter or any other optional effect like that, like Armageddon Knight. Well, first chance after he activates that effect targeting a monster, I can flip my Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. But guess what? It's not going to negate this guy. Why? His activation happened. Past tense. So, might want to have had this card active, already resolved, because then if they try to special summon him, they can special summon him, they can activate his effect. But guess what? This card is going to say no. Now, remember, it just says negate. It doesn't say negate and destroy. A lot of cards in YuGiOh that say negate and destroy, like Magic Jammer, Solemn Judgment, Stardust Dragon. But guess what? This only says negate. So it'll negate, but this guy will end up staying on the field. He can activate, it'll just get negated. Now, let's say this other little Blackwing guy here attacks. If I flip this in response to his attack, he kills my monster, his effect will attempt to activate. This will negate that activation as soon as it happens. So he won't get the free Blackwing, so I can kind of trick my opponent a little bit there. But generally speaking, this probably needs to be flipped ahead of time. Unlike cards like, say, Royal Decree that care about effects, cards that care about activations really need to be active in advance. because it's rare that you'll get a card like this you can kind of cheat around, because you get the activation time, a little warning after they summon it. Most monsters that have dangerous effects can activate it on priority. So cards like this are real iffy at best if you wait to activate them. So this is really a standby phase flip unless you feel like you got a really good read on your opponent and what they're trying to do. Here's another little negation guy you might want to think about. This guy's effect is continuous. Some people seem to think that continuous effects activate when the card comes into play. When this guy is summoned, his effect doesn't activate. Continuous effects don't have an activation. In Yu-Gi-Oh! An activation is a very specific sort of thing. And this guy doesn't have one because he doesn't have an activated effect. It's not an ignition effect, it's not a multi-trigger, it's not anything like that. This guy never has a time when he, boom, activates. There's not a specific thing he does at a specific time. It simply is. It's a state-based kind of thing as soon as he comes into play. Which means this doesn't stop him when he comes into play. You can't say, attempt to special summon a monster, and when he says, no you don't, this can negate him, because this guy always says, no you don't. You don't get to attempt special summons. He says you can't. You just can't. So, once again, this doesn't stop him at some time when you want to try to special summon. Actually, to tell the truth, these cards have no interaction whatsoever. Same goes for any other continuous effect, like isn't destroyed by battle, for instance. This won't affect cards like that either. State-based. Enough of that. Same goes for light imprisoning, obviously, one more time, just for those of you who are interested. Royal Oppression, another negation card with a lot of headaches involving it. Royal Oppression is one of the best negations of special summons possible. It's continuous, although it's actually a continuous multi-trigger, though I think that term is technically outdated now, but whatever. It's a continuous card, but current ruling is that when somebody attempts a special summon, you can flip it in response and pay the 800 as soon as you flip it and negate that special summon. Note, this card actually negates two things. It can negate the special summon of a monster or the activation of an effect that would special summon a monster. What's the difference? Special summon of a monster is a special summon that goes on the chain as a special summon. That's Cyber Dragon, that's Gale the Whirlwind, that's Gladiator Beast Geysaris. You know what those things are called? Inherent special summons. But it also negates the effect of a card that would special summon something. Cards like that are cards like Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is not a special summon. It is a spell card which has an effect which special summons somebody. But that's not the same thing as an inherent special summon. Those are two different things. Now, fortunately for you, this card catches both. So, you'll negate special summoning Gale. Negates it. Activate your Monster Reborn. It negates it. Good news, bad news. But there is one thing that it won't stop. Ever notice how Gravekeeper's Spy and Mystic Tomato always seem to be in decks with this card, and you're thinking to yourself, man, that's stupid. Why would you put a bunch of cards in your deck that this card negates? That's kind of risky, isn't it? No, it's not. Why? Because cards like Gravekeeper's Spy and Mystic Tomato activate during the damage step. Well, guess what? Only certain kinds of cards can be activated in the damage step, and this isn't one of them. So guess what? This scoots in under the radar. So do all other recruiters for that matter. Effects which end up special summoning or special summons themselves which actually occurred during the damage step are cards that this card can affect because the damage step is worked very specially. And only certain kinds of cards can be activated during the damage step. I suggest going to YuGiOh-card.com if you want more clarification on that. The damage step has a lot of picky, nitty-gritty detail kind of stuff in it that I really don't have the time in a 10-minute or less video to actually get into. So anyway, that's the end of negations. So I'm going to say rate, comment, subscribe, and check out all my vids. Thanks. Peace until next time.